Okay, here's a quick example of how Bobcat's stitching can get you in trouble. So what we're looking at here is that's a solid square, six-sided square. This is a solid square, and I've got them poking in and out of each other. I'll show you this later. This is just a surface sticking in the side of it. So let's look at this one first. What it is it's a six-sided rectangular solid. I've got everything separated out. Inside of it, I put a surface. Just goes right down the middle of it, right? Now, what Bobcat will allow you to do is stitch this into a solid, which would then be a malformed solid, because that surface in the middle of it isn't really anything, right? I mean, remember, a surface isn't really something in reality. It's just so, even though Bobcat tells you that's a solid, it's really malformed, because the only way that could be have that surface in there is if these were two separate solids and there would in theory be two surfaces on that outside edge, or one of these would be a solid surface, then this one would be a five-sided open surface without a surface over there. So it telling you that's a solid is not really true. That's and so that's why you can get in trouble with it, the surfacing. So it actually kind of allows you to do booleans too. Like if we do a boolean here, then it works, right? But if, let's try and see if we can recreate something here. Let's put it there, right? Now that solid is right on what is in geometry a malformed solid. Now let's do a solid and see what happens. So, okay, so you see how the intersection, it's all undefined. It's now you've got bad surfaces, and that's where you're going to start running into problems. It's just the done deal now. Forget it. And if you're doing, and your other model has a bunch of weird stuff like that. So anyway, so that's that. Um, so a Boolean, what is a Boolean? It's actually a a trim and discard of surfaces and restitch into a solid, all in just one command. So like, really, if I was gonna do this over here that I just showed you, that inner surface would just be deleted, and then that would be one big square, right? If that was a solid. Since this one, if you have two squares and see how they intersect with each other, if I do a Boolean add on that, see how all that stuff in between there just disappears. If it left surfaces in the middle of there, that would be a malformed solid. So, and same thing with this. In your other one, your original file you posted had all these tiny surfaces like this that were left over from previous not good operations. And so when surfaces like this are sticking inside, remember, this is not something that's ever in real life. It's an infinitely thin just representation of a plane. The only way that would become real life is to give it some kind of thickness. Then it would do a Boolean. But if you have these things sticking inside of your Booleans and stuff, then it doesn't really work. There would be no such thing as that inside of. You couldn't have this inside of a solid. You know what I mean? That corner of that plane sticking in there. It just doesn't exist. Now, you can extrude it to 0.0001 thick and cut it in there. Would represent something in real life, a piece of paper cut out of a side of a block, in other words. So you have to really pay attention to that kind of stuff. So stitching is really only for when you're capping ends, and when you're doing surface work, you want to stitch things together, but you have to be really careful about stitching together things that are inappropriate to be stitched. Um, So in theory, this with Bobcat, its stitching thing should, if they could make it more robust, it would have stitched part of this into a solid, and then this would be a separate open side thing, or it would have told you, it would have popped up some kind of message saying you have to do some trimming first. So if we back up, and here we are with this, right? So let's stitch. Let's stitch this and that into a solid, right? Now I want to make intersection curves, which are surfaces. And damn it, it's not going to give it to me, is it? Let's see. Maybe I need to get separated out so I can get at that other one. Okay, so now I can get at that surface. So let's see if that will allow me, because really there's an intersection there between all of those, right? And that solid has to be trimmed with that. So let's go intersection curves. I'm going to click that. Now I'm going to hide it. It's not letting me hide it. Okay. Let's try one more time. There it is. So that's not gonna, so that command isn't gonna allow to do it. So really what I need to do then is split that solid with that surface. So you saw me do that in your video there. There's that. And now we should have a split solid. Two solids. Right? There you go. So now with the two solids split, there's actually two of those surfaces in there. Now those are two solids split. If I Boolean union those again, there will be no surface in the middle is what it should be if it was done properly. So let's unstitch that. Backed up a little. Let me get that, make sure I don't have something in the way there. So that. Okay. There, I got rid of the Boolean I did. I have the two solids, right? So let's blank those. Now I got to get rid of that split surface that I had there because that was kind of throwing off what I wanted to show you. Now let's unblank. Now that I've created those two there. Now if I Boolean union those, again, you notice the middle surface thing goes away. It doesn't do this one here. So again, the failure in Bobcat would be it actually allows me to stitch that and that together. Now I'm pretty sure it did, right? Yeah, so see I have that and that stitched together now, which is not the way you would do that. So if I actually break that into, or unstitch that I have malformed solids in there, because those are really not, there's not really solids there, and there's overlapping surfaces. See the overlapping surfaces? So again, careful with stitching, right? That hopefully that kind of illustrates how you can create bad things using stitching if you don't use it for the right thing. Okay.